The Megami Tensei series has a lot of games. You've got the Devil Summoner series, the original Digital Devil Summoner games, the Devil Survivor series, Last Bible series, the actual mainline Shin Megami Tensei games that has one new game like every 10 years, standalones like Tokyo Mirage Session FE and games like Catherine and Trauma Center, which are questionably in the Megami Tensei series but also not. But it feels like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, Persona. Persona, like Devil Summoner and Last Bible, is a spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei, or SMT for short. It's a series that in recent years has seemed to have completely eclipsed the popularity of the actual mainline series. More people talk about and know more about Persona than the actual mainline SMT games. But it didn't start out that way. Persona used to be a pretty small series, with Persona 1 and 2 Eternal Punishment releasing when Atlas wasn't really well known in the West. I mean, heck, it wasn't until 2011 for when we got Persona 2 Innocent Sin. But Persona 3 is what shot this series into critical acclaim, and got the ball rolling for its popularity, which basically means that the first 3 Persona games, 1, 2, and 2 sequel, are kinda black sheeps of the series. I only have Persona 5 and I'm still slowly playing for that myself. I tend to take my sweet time with games. And for those 5 months, I've really gotten into this small YouTuber named Marsh, who has an ongoing series called the SMT Experience, where he covers the SMT games in playthrough highlights / review sort of fashion. And you should totally watch him. He has a great personality and has a ton of knowledge on the games he's covering. Good job on that SMT 9 video, Marsh. I really enjoyed that one. But watching his series gave me an idea. What if I did that type of video, but for the Persona series and other games? And from that thought came this video right here, the Persona 1 Experience. Persona 1, or Megami Ibunroku Persona, as it's known in Japan, is a 1996 JRPG by Atlas. As I've said before, it's a spin-off of SMT, a game series which takes place in post-apocalyptic Japan, overrun with demons. The main gameplay of SMT is befriending demons to become part of your party, kind of like an edgy version of Pokemon in a way. Though SMT came first, all the demons and other parts of the game like names, items, and buildings are based off of things from Judaic lore, Japanese mythology, Greek mythology, and more. All SMT games have multiple endings where a player can either choose the law, chaos, or neutral ending. Persona was inspired by a SMT game called SMT-If, released 2 years before Persona 1 in 1994, in which instead of the world-ending apocalypse happening like in most SMT games, If takes place in normal Japan, with a high school setting where your entire school, Karukuzaka High, is transported to the demon world. So, you and some schoolmates must find your way back to your own world. Persona took that aspect and ran with it, where later on, those scenes that happened in If are taken and altered in Persona 1. In Persona, the story centers on you and a couple of your high school friends being transported to an alternate reality, where demons are normal, and you have to fight your way back to get to your own reality. What sets it apart was its themes of discovering who you are, and accepting the good and bad parts of yourself, and the multiple yous, or personas, see what I did there, that you have within yourself. Which is a nice touch seeing a game cover this topic. It's realistic that teenagers are still finding themselves and who they are and what they want to be. They also changed the main fighting system. Instead of demons fighting for you, you have a persona, a sort of guardian spirit that's part of you, and is formed through the user's personality. And only those who have a strong mind can actually manifest one. This concept was pretty much lifted straight from the anime and manga series called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where most characters have a powerful psychic ability called a stand, a physical embodiment of their personality. Each stand is personal to the user, and each has a unique power only to them. After Persona's release in Japan, the then newly founded Atlas West scrambled and made a English version called Revelations Persona in only 2 months. To cut down on time translating, likely to make a holiday release, they cut half of the game out. Yeah, in the Japanese version of Persona, there's 2 entire stories to do. The Sepic route, the one that was included in Revelations, and the Snow Queen quest, which was only in the Japanese version. On top of that, Revelations decided to heavily, and I mean heavily, localize the game, and also censored it at some points, changing the town name, changing the country to America for where it takes place, even changing character names, hair, and skin color, in an attempt to Americanize the game. Like, dang, Mark looks, a bit different from his Japanese counterpart. Jeez, why did they do that? However, funnily enough, they didn't even change the opening cutscene for whatever reason. They still had their original hair color. There's also tons of spelling mistakes found in the game. Though this could probably be the result of the quality assurance team, which was, 3 people. Yeah, that's it. Thankfully, when the game was re-released in 2009 for the PSP, they removed all of the localization. keeping every character intact from their Japanese counterpart. And brought half of the game back. They even went so far as to fully retranslate the script, make brand new cutscenes replacing the primitive 90s CGI, and scrub up the UI and menus, making them look a lot nicer, which makes this almost the definitive version. There's still things that Revelations has that Persona PSP doesn't. For one thing, Alice chose to redo the music to fit Persona 3 and 4 style, which totally ruined the atmosphere of Persona 1. They also didn't remaster or remake every single track. The original Japanese version bolsters 133 tracks of music. Meanwhile, the PSP version only has 69 songs. Also, the original music is just kinda better than the PSP version. The PSP version is still good, though I would vastly prefer the original game's soundtrack when playing. Like, yo, Mark's theme kinda slaps. I wonder what it sounds like in the PSP remat. Oh, it's not there. The intro cutscene in Persona PSP is also a whole lot lighter in tone, with it being a music video, while Revelations' opening cutscene is a lot more darker and somber. The CG doesn't help. Those 3D rendered blocks creep me out. Another thing was that they totally jacked up the encounter rate in the PSP version. The encounter rates are insane in Persona PSP. It made me want to tear my hair out at some points. Basically what I'm trying to say is, the Shadow Revelations Persona versus the Virgin Persona 1 PSP. In all seriousness, you could go either way for the two versions. If you want updated quality of life changes like the cutscenes, way better script, better UI, and the Snow Queen quest, pick Persona 1 PSP. If you want a classic experience, better fitting and more music, a darker tone, and maybe something to laugh at if I'm being honest, pick Revelations. There's nothing wrong in both versions, it's just your own preferences. And with this brief history and more, settle in. Maybe use the bathroom before you start watching, cause jeez, have you seen the length of this video? And let me tell you, the Persona 1 experience. The game starts out with a scripture from an ancient Chinese anecdotal book called the Zhuangzi, named after the famous Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi, focusing on the butterfly dream. The most famous of the stories told in the Zhuangzi tells of a dream that Zhuangzi had. He dreamed he was a butterfly, flying around being happy and not knowing of his real self, Zhuangzi. He then woke up from the dream and was himself again, though he didn't know if he dreamt he was a butterfly or if he was the butterfly, dreaming that he was Zhuangzi right now, and that there must be some distinction between himself and the butterfly. The story deals with the thought of transformation, and that the line between reality and a dream is a thin line that can be easily crossed, basically meaning that are you the you that you say you are? How this ties into Persona is through theming. Is the persona that you're putting up the true you, or is it just a false mask you put up to hide your true feelings to someone? Which I think is a pretty cool concept to explore in a game or book. Well, after that, I am 14 and this is deep type stuff. It opens up proper, with you and your friends in a classroom at your high school, St. Hermelin High, playing the Persona game and arguing if it's true or not. Through this argument, we're introduced to almost all of the main characters. There's Masao Inaba, nicknamed Mark, a spoiled and somewhat rude troublemaker with a heart of gold. The one betting that personas are real is Hidehiko Usugi, or his nickname, Brown. He's someone who wants the spotlight and tends to laugh serious and oppressing things off, though deep down he can be a coward. Then there's Yuka Ayase. She's a bit of an airhead, and is pretty carefree. After Ayase, there's Elly, or her full name, Mariko Kirishima, a student who returned from abroad. She's a refined and intelligent honor student. Markman asks Nanjo and Yukino to throw in their opinions. Nanjo, or as he's called throughout the game as just Nanjo, is from a wealthy family. He can be a cold and hard logic-based person, though he's a caring person when he needs to be. Finally, there's the last character introduced so far, Yukino Mayuzumi. Or you guessed it, just Yukino. She's a reformed Sukeban, the female version of a delinquent. She's a serious but kind-hearted person who cares about those around her. They both disagree with Brown, saying the whole persona thing is a bunch of made-up stuff. Mark then prompts you asking what you think, giving me the option between believing in the game or just calling it a bunch of crap. I already played a bit of the game before deciding on making it a video, so just for curiosity I chose to say they weren't real. After it doesn't work, the group bickers over bets they made and things like that, just when a little girl in a white dress appears asking them to help her. Then after a moment of confusion, Mark, Yukino, Nanjo, and me get blasted by lightning and get knocked out, and get sent to like the Shadow Realm or something. In the dream, a man by the name of Philemon introduces himself. Philemon comes from the studies of Carl Jung. He was a Swiss psychiatrist and also a psychoanalyst, basically someone who uses therapeutic techniques to study the mind when unconscious. Philemon came to Carl Jung, like what happens to the main character in Persona, in a dream. Kind of like what happens in the butterfly dream too. Basically, Philemon was, to Carl Jung, a higher power, who taught him psychological objectivity and what was true about the soul. Yeah, what the hell was this guy on? Seriously. Much like what Carl Jung's version of Philemon, the Philemon here is basically a higher power that gives you guidance throughout the game. He asks us to say our name, giving us the option to name our character. I wanted to put a spin on the character's canon name, so I searched it up and found out Persona 1's protagonist's name is Boy with the Earring. Yeah, it's not even a name. So with a bit of thinking, I came up with Boyo Earringer and chose my nickname as Ear. So for the rest of the game, people called me Boyo, or in battles I was called Ear. Which, yeah, it was kinda dumb, but whatever. Philemon starts monologuing about the various views inside yourself and gives us our our personas to us. He then tells us it's time to wake up and sends us back to the real world. As I was waking up, we overhear our friends talking. It turns out they all had the same dream of Philemon. Fully waking up in the nurse's office, greeted by our friends, the school's nurse, Miss Natsumi, and our teacher, Miss Psycho. Miss Psycho then gives me the day off from helping out in the classroom. Gee, thanks, it's not like I got struck by magical lightning or anything like that. She then tells us to go get ourselves checked out at the local hospital. Which again, I don't think you tell kids you got struck by lightning to walk to the hospital to get a checkup, but they gotta get us there somehow. While Yukino was talking to her about the checkup, Miss Natsumi asks us if it's true that a student in our class is also in the hospital. It turns out we have a friend named Maki who's been sick at the hospital for over a year now. So, Miss Psycho says that we should also pay her a visit while we're there. The game then gives us the option to gain control of our character and explore the school before we leave for the hospital. Roaming around the school, you can do a couple of optional things. You can have some optional dialogue with Elly and Ayase. You can enter some classrooms and talk to students. You can check out the club rooms, with the highlight being the fencing club, where you can see a girl named Tamaki and a guy named Tadashi arguing. The funny thing is, Tamaki is actually the protagonist from SMTF. She moved from Karokazaka High to Saint Melon High after what happened at her old school. You know, with the whole overworld demon thing. Also, this makes Tamaki and the events that happened in SMTF canon, in the Persona universe, which effectively makes SMTF the first game in the Persona timeline. The more you know, I guess. When you eventually leave the school, you meet a man dressed in a suit named Yamaoka, Nanjo's butler. And you get kind of a cute moment with Yamaoka embarrassing Nanjo in front of his friends. Nanjo, embarrassed, tells Yamaoka not to follow us. And after that, we're able to explore and get a lay of the town of Mikagecho. You have the option to pretty much explore the entire town before going to Maki. Some of the highlights of the town are the Mikage ruins, which I only explored a little bit of at the very end of the game, and the Mikage Sun Mall, with its various stores. Entering the hospital, we check in and we learn from Mark that Maki's room is in room 302. Before actually entering the main hospital, if you check the vending machine, you can meet a hiding Yamaoka disobeying Nanjo's orders. It just shows how much of a Chad Butler Yamaoka is, looking out for Nanjo that much and all. After that, I entered the hospital and quickly walked up the floors and got to room 302. Here, we're introduced to Maki Sonamura, a Solon girl who wishes to leave the hospital. Maki tells us that she's doing a lot better than when she was first hospitalized, saying how she wonders if it's because of a nice dream she's been having. Maki doesn't go too in depth about the dream. You can infer she was dreaming about Philemon. Mark then asks her how her mom's doing at Sebek. It's basically just anime Microsoft. Maki then reacts angrily, talking about how her mom cares more about her job than her own daughter. Then, she collapses, unconscious. After the doctor's called and Maki's rushed to the ICU, the group waits outside, waiting for the news on Maki's condition. Just then an earthquake happens, shaking the entire building, though it subsides pretty quickly. Mark, worried about Maki after the massive earthquake that grumbled the whole building, rushes to the ICU door, only to realize the entire ICU has just been deleted. Just then, the group hears a scream and rush to see what happened. Going through the doors, we find a injured Yamaoka surrounded by zombies that attacked him and a frightened nurse. Nanjo, realizing it's Yamaoka, rushes in to save him. And from here, we get our first taste of combat. Or not really, as the game just kinda controls all the characters for you. Basically, I summon Not-Star Platinum and punch a zombie into oblivion. The rest of the group get their own personas and proceed to one-shot the rest of the zombies. After the battle, Nanjo then talks to a dying Yamaoka. He tells Nanjo to stand up for himself and become the #1 man in Japan. And with that, he passes away. For what we saw of Yamaoka, I really enjoyed his character and his dynamic with Nanjo. After walking out of the room, we're introduced to our first dungeon, Mikage Hospital. Persona 1 has a bunch of dungeons, with some being short and some being really long. After walking around for a tiny bit, we get our first proper encounter. The battle system in Persona 1 is a bit funky. All fights take place on a grid, where you can move and position your units to your liking. If your sword won't reach the monster, just go into the menu and reposition your unit to be closer to the enemy. Personally, I didn't mess around with this too much. I mean, the game never actually explained this. To my knowledge at least, maybe I'm just dumb. I found out how to do this like 1/3 into the actual game. Other than that, the combat is pretty standard RPG stuff. You have attack, basically meaning your melee weapon, shoot, a ranged option where you can use your gun, skill, where you can use your persona's abilities to cast spells, buffs, and debuffs. How you get more spells is by leveling up your persona. Basically, it's just a menu where you can swap your persona for another one to utilize different spells. There's also item and guard, but they pretty much explain themselves. Then there's also how they handled the level up system for the player. Each time the player levels up, they usually have 3 points to put into their attributes. So, you can focus on a single attribute or go for an all-around build. The dungeon was pretty easy to clear. It's a bit awkward to navigate on your first attempt, but you'll probably be able to get through it without much issue. You also learn that every 5 steps you take, you're gonna get a random encounter, setting the tone for every dungeon very early. To clear the dungeon, all you have to do is make your way down to the hospital and escape it. After making it to the entrance of the hospital, we find a nurse stuck under a vending machine. We're given the option to either help her and lift the vending machine, saving her life, or just leave her there to die. Now this option is the start of many choices that actually make an impact in the game. If you choose the good option and save her, it'll set you on the path to the good ending. Basically, whenever you get these choices, always choose the helpful option, since it'll lead you to the true ending, and it'll influence how many of the ultimate personas you'll be able to get near the end of the game. As we start to lift the vending machine off of her, some demons attack. But just then Elly walks in and like an absolute Chad, calmly says good day to us, and fights them off using her own persona. I guess she can use that now. Elly informs us that demons have invaded the entirety of Mikage-cho, and there's no way to leave town. We're also told by her that Maki's mom, Setsuko, has collapsed at the local shrine. And with that said, we leave the first dungeon and into the streets. Fighting our way through demons, we make our way to the shrine where we find Maki's mom and a golden butterfly. The butterfly then comes over to us and gives us a vision of Philemon. And basically, to summarize, he just tells us some cryptic stuff and it's not that important. Anyway, after that is over, we find out that Maki's mom's been capped in the leg by the lackeys of Kandori, the president of Sebek's Mikage branch. Maki's mom reveals that the invasion of demons is all because of Kandori, and the device called the Diva System, a device that can alter reality that she helped work on. Before passing out from her wounds, she gives us a keycard to enter the abandoned factory, which leads to the Sebek building. Mark then says he has nothing to do and Nanjo goes with him. So, me, Elly, and Yukino rush Setsuko to the school. Since, the hospital kinda got invaded by zombies 5 minutes beforehand. When getting to the school, Setsuko is rushed to the nurse's office. But we probably shouldn't have left her body on the ground though. After Setsuko rests up and plot dumps to Miss Natsume and Miss Psycho, I'm asked to go tell the wall-plugging group to stop since that might block out Nanjo and Mark. Before going to the wall though, I looked around the school and got a rapier from Tamaki that lasted me way more than it should have. After getting to the hole and having a brief conversation with Yuko and Ayase, I tried to leave for the hole, and when I did, Maki showed up all of a sudden, acting a lot more happier than her normal gloomy self. Ayase and Yuko are generally confused at what she's saying, with Maki even denying her hospitalization. But you could verify that it's the real her because he's wearing her favorite compact, a sort of necklace type thing. All of a sudden, Ninja pops up from the hole, also giving a comment on Maki showing up randomly. He tells us Mark tried to get weapons at the police station but got captured by demons. So we gotta go get him back. And Nanjo also gives us some guns. Real guns, not some Persona 5 Weenie Hat Jr. ones. Right after we leave for the hole, Maki asks what a police station is. Nanjo, confused at her comment, goes full on Wikipedia mode, spouting a dictionary definition of what a police station actually is. Maki's situation keeps getting weirder and weirder, huh? After this, we reach the police station. The police station is a really easy dungeon. It was a bit confusing to navigate, but pretty much all you gotta do is make it to the room where Mark is. When we get there, it turns out Mark was also captured by the demons when he tried to get weapons there too. After a almost non-existent boss fight and a quick talk to Brown about what a persona is, we're given the option to let him into our party, finishing out the roster. Choose wisely. If you choose yes, you won't be able to allow Ayase, Elly, or Nevercare to later on Reiji into your party for the whole rest of the playthrough. I was completely unaware of this and basically immediately said yes, not knowing he was permanent. This didn't really bother me though. I really liked Brown. He added some nice flavor to the game with his huge ego and all. And after that, it's off to the abandoned factory. And I wasn't paying attention and I don't know where to go at all. I was playing this game at night and I was really sleepy, so I didn't pay a ton of attention to the dialogue. So it's kinda sad that I literally explored the entire town for 40 minutes wondering, where the hell do I go? When the game's been yelling in your face to go to the abandoned factory the whole game so far. Though I guess wandering on the map does have its perks. I found out Santa Mountain High was surrounded by a mysterious barrier, preventing us from getting in, so I guess that was kinda neat. I literally went everywhere though. I even went into the subway thinking there was something there. I did meet Elly there though, which is where you can recruit her to join your group if you don't have Brown already. And it's the last time I saw her for the rest of the game, not counting the epilogue. After literally searching it up, I finally got back on track to the abandoned factory. When entering, we also find Ayase in there too. She volunteers to join us, but because we already have a full party, Brown just kinda calls her dumb and Ayase just tells us to basically piss off and leaves. Leaving the game, like Elly, entirely up until the epilogue. Well, goodbye Ayase, I guess. She is never mentioned again, I'm not even kidding. After using the keycard, it causes the floor to open up to reveal sort of like a micro-dungeon before we enter the Sebek office. The gimmick of it is that in order to open the doors up and progress, we need to find 2 activation switches. It was fairly straightforward, the demons weren't too tough and I found the switches pretty fast. After getting the door to open, we're introduced to our first real dungeon of the game, the Sebek building. This dungeon was the first pain in the neck experience of the game. The dungeon monsters put up a challenge and there was a couple close calls too. There's also these guys who are like one of the only human enemies in the game. They're basically just Sebek snarks, who were a pain in the ass to take down. Sometimes they're manageable, but if they're in a group of more enemies or they can tip their hand on you, it's a mess. The dungeon can be a bit confusing, but I found the entrance to the boss room eventually. Just follow the stairs and it's pretty straightforward from there. Walking in, we're properly introduced to Kandori and his right-hand man, Takeda. Kandori basically just insults us and sticks Takeda on us. Takeda is the first proper boss of the game. And guess what? He's surrounded by an entourage of visitors. Takeda is actually a pretty hard boss. I lost him on my first attempt. Takeda is pretty much only strong because he's backed by 4 guys, and he's one of the only enemy persona users in the game. A good strategy is to stock up on heals and revives at the store that's close to the boss room. Just heal up for Kandori's Miragi attack, and use multi-target spells and ice attacks and you should be fine. After the fight, Kandori's dipped from the scene. We gotta rush for the lab section to catch up to him. All of it isn't much of note, except for these like harpy guys that inflict charm and make the fight so annoying and slow. But other than that, it's not too much issue. We make it to a room where the Diva system is located. And overhear a conversation with Kandori talking to a scientist named Dr. Nikolai about someone Kandori feared into a dimensional rift caused by the system. After noticing this, Kandori forces Dr. Nikolai into the Diva system with him. But in an effort to stop Kandori, Nikolai starts the system, literally trying to reduce Kandori and himself to atoms to stop the changes made by the Diva system. We're left with a choice. Press the blue button, which will accelerate the system, killing Kandori and stopping the mess made to the town. Or press the red button, shutting down the Diva system, saving Nikolai but also saving Kandori at the same time. Like the nurse back in the hospital, if you choose the bad option, the blue button, it'll set you on the path to the bad ending. And like always, I was playing this late at night, and was tired, so I was completely brain dead and pretty much missed the descriptions for both the buttons. So for like a good few minutes I didn't know which button to pick. I felt like I'd heard the red button was the good one, but I didn't know. Pretty much the sweating button dude meme. But luckily I made the right choice and chose the red button. After choosing it, it actually causes it to spin faster, causing a little girl in a black dress to like materialize from it. She tells us we're not going to kill her daddy. Okay, that's kinda weird. Kandori, I guess he's her daddy, hears this and asks her to transport him to her world, and she also pretended and disguises us too. After a flash of light, we wake up in the gym. Then after getting our bearings, the student walks in, telling Maki that a guy named Yosuke got hurt, and that the girl in black who we just saw has been causing trouble in the school again. It turns out Yosuke disappeared along with his girlfriend Chisato 2 months before in the real world, and no one has seen them since. Kind of a side note, but I like how much Nanjo just isn't phased about the whole reality hopping. Dude starts interrogating kids to see if their memories match up to the real world. Exploring the school, you can tell something's off. There's not a lot of kids around, people aren't acting as they should be, and Yukino doesn't know what the hell we're talking about. Eventually, we meet up with a banged up Yosuke. It turns out that him and his girlfriend Chisato came here 2 months ago from our world. He also tells us this world isn't exactly like our own. Where the police station used to be in our world is now a forest, and the hospital is now a castle. Yosuke also lets it slip that the Maki that's in with us for the game at this point is this world's Maki, not the Maki we know, the one in the hospital. If you're wondering where Chisato is, turns out the girl in black took her with her. Then, as if on cue, the girl in black attacks, locking us in and summoning monsters to attack the school. At this point, I really needed to stop and grind. I was getting my ass kicked by these toilet seat demons. Like, every time they were gonna die, they'd do some like kamikaze type thing on my party and drain their health. So I grinded for about 2 hours. I also tried to get a new persona while I was grinding. How you form a persona is from using 2 spell cards, which you get by convincing a demon to give you one through conversation. How it works is that each demon has a certain set of personality traits, and each of your party members have a certain list of persuasion options to change their emotions. If you make them eager and happy, they might give you an item or a spell card. If you anger them, they'll get pissed off at you and attack first. And finally, if you make them scared, their guard will drop. It's a pretty complex system, which basically means that you should follow a guide. I'm not even joking. After a couple of spell cards, I started following a guide, because I didn't have the time to mess around with all the options. Anyways, after messing around for a while, I finally managed to secure a spell card by annoying these villains so much they gave me their spell card to make me go away. The dungeon is basically Sandpillen High with the most wacky school layout ever. It's kinda weird just wandering around this mess of a hallway and being like, oh yeah, that's a classroom. I also tried to get a ton of spell cards, but no luck. And I still got my ass kicked by the toilets, but I managed. While wandering for a while, I also walked into this classroom, where I met this Giga Chad named Reiji. Like, look at this dude. Man's got an 8-pack. Jesus. Dude radiates alpha male energy. He protects his girl from a demon by one-shotting it into oblivion. Again, showing his massive balls. Reiji then tells us he doesn't need our help and leaves to solve things by himself. Reiji is kind of a secret character that you can get if you don't let Brown or the others join your party. But to get him, it requires some of the most goofy tasks ever. Some like how to play as Luigi in Mario 64 type stuff. To simplify it, you have to do some really specific stuff before you go to the alternate world. Like talking to specific NPCs in order and going to specific locations to string how Reiji got here. It's things you probably wouldn't figure out without a guide. Anyways, Reiji's simping over. We make it out of the dungeon and catch up to the little girl. Here we're properly introduced to her. Her name's Aki, and she, seems very intent on protecting Kandori. Or as she puts it, Daddy. Yeah, it's, kinda weird. She basically just insults us and sticks her, giant robot mouse that's got a minigun on its back on us. Weirdness aside, Tesso, the boss's name, isn't very hard, but god damn is he a chunky boy. Because I still have the base personas at this point, I couldn't find a weak spot. So I just kind of poked him until he died. After the boss fight, Aki threatens to tell Kandori on us and uses her compact to teleport away. I don't think this will be the last we see of her. Right after she leaves, Yosuke tells us that he wants us to go into the library to meet someone. Walking into the library, we meet Tsutomu, a guy that's really into the occult and looks like he walked straight out of a Iron Maiden album cover. He tells us that recently a giant black door popped up in the library without any reason. He also says that he knew all of this was going to happen because a man in a mask named Philemon told him. And you know what that means? We're off to Elia's shrine. Walking into the shrine, we get another cutscene with Philemon. He basically tells us that in order to get closer to Kandori, we'll first need to travel through the subway to get to his castle, but stopping us is a guardian, and to bypass him, we need an item called the Expel Mirror. Before going and getting the Expel Mirror, I stopped and upgraded my team with new guns, new armor, new items, and I went to the Velvet Room. Talked to Igor, yeah, this has been in Persona since the original, and fused my first persona, Pyrojack, who, like my rapier, shouldn't have lasted me a lot longer than it should have. I couldn't actually buy new weapons, because for whatever reason, the option of buying weapons was locked behind a casino place called Judgment 1999. where you have to play gambling games like blackjack and poker to gain points to buy things like weapons from the points cashier. Think of it like the adult version of the Chuck E. Cheese ticket booth. I tried later on but gave up pretty quickly because I kept on failing and didn't want to waste time gaining and losing points for the weapons, so I could only get weapons from items dropped by demons or from chests. After that we went for the Expel Mirror, found in the Historical Society. As we're about to take it, we get a vision of the little girl who zapped us in the beginning, telling us not to take it. And you know what? Do we listen to her words? Nah, we completely ignore her and take it. After that, we make our way to the subway. The subway was actually a pretty easy dungeon, all things considered. Some of the enemies were damage sponges, probably because they only had pyrojack, so it was mostly just me. But this compared to the next dungeon was a cakewalk. The boss, this big fish monster, was also a cakewalk. He was just a damage sponge, so I cleared him pretty easily. After killing the fish monster, Aki shows up and basically bullies us for 2 minutes straight, saying how if we show up at her place, she'll trap us inside. And then, like always, she teleports away. And that's where I'm going to end it for this video. If this video was taking too long and I wanted to get something out, I've been working on this for like 3 months. Don't worry, part 2 is coming sometime. YouTube's just a hobby, so I work on videos whenever I feel like it. The release of this ties pretty nicely with Persona's 25th anniversary event, which is happening on the 1st of September. I totally didn't plan that, but happy 25th anniversary, Persona. I think they might actually announce Persona 6. I wonder who this could be. Or it's just gonna be another Persona 5 game. That's it for now, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!